Xiao is finally upon us, and with it comes the true Anemo hypercarry that we've always wanted. However, he does sometimes have problems with his energy consumption because he can't really generate a lot of energy during his elemental bursts. He can use his E, but that doesn't actually give him energy during his burst. So usually, if you aren't running an energy recharge weapon on him like the Skyward Spine or maybe this prototype Star Glitter, you might want to be able to run a Anemo support character with him to kind of aid him with the energy battery that he is kind of going to need. You have a few options here. You obviously have Jean, Sucrose, Venti, and you have the Anemo Traveler. I think the Anemo Traveler is probably not the most ideal, but if you have them, they can work. It's just that their little Elemental Burst Tornado kind of pushes enemies further away from Xiao and doesn't keep them in like one place. Sucrose and Venti are definitely the two characters that are like that. Their elemental bursts kind of keep enemies together and puts them in a condensed area so that Xiao can deal all of his damage. Jean is a bit different. She does have her Gale Blade, which does allow her to push enemies, towards a specific location and kind of clump up enemies together that way. And she does offer some healing with her elemental burst and her E, and her attacks, I mean. But I don't feel she's going to be the best option unless you really want an Anemo support that can kind of act as a pseudo energy battery, as well as fulfill the needs of your team in terms of needing a healer, for instance. If you don't want to run something like a Barbara or a Chi-Chi or a Xingqiu or a character like that that can actually heal Xiao and keep him healed during his elemental burst. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in this dungeon right here. I'm just going to kind of show you guys a bit of a kind of initial impressions of who I think is going to be the best Anemo support character for Xiao. Now, obviously, I have my full energy up right now, but you're going to see during Xiao's elemental bursts how much energy I get with other characters depending on their stuff. So for Venti, for example, I'm going to start with Venti. Venti, obviously, his elemental burst is amazing. But the problem is that the enemies are too high up on the ground, and so I can't consistently hit them all with my my plunging attack. Now, obviously, when they land on the ground, afterwards, they're all clumped up, and you can very reliably hit a lot of the enemies at the same time. But it feels like if you're trying to use the elemental burst for the purpose of clumping them all together so you can just spam your elemental burst as plunging attacks, it's not going to be the best thing ever, unfortunately. But as you can see, even after all that, my energy on Xiao is fully charged, and as you can see, I don't really have that much energy recharge. I have one artifact that gives me 10% energy recharge. I know I have 100% crit. Over 100% crit. But it's something to keep in mind that an Anemo support in that kind of situations where you have a lot of mobs clumped in together that can kind of allow you to kill them and get a lot of energy from them can definitely help kind of keep Xiao's ultimate uptime as high as possible. Do keep in mind also that my heroes like my Venti, my Sucrose, and my Jean aren't fully built, really. They don't have the most optimal stats, they don't have the most optimal damage, and I'm also not adding in any elemental reactions of my own to at least Sucrose and Venti's elemental burst, as well as the Traveler. So that kind of swirl reaction is not going to happen in this specific instance. I want to kind of show not so much the damage that they can deal with the elemental reactions, but the synergy that they have with Xiao himself and his elemental burst. Next up is going to be Sucrose. I'm going to use her burst on her, use her E just for good measure. And as you can see, the enemies are low enough and are closer to the ground where they can all actually get hit by my plunging attack. Which is one thing that Sucrose has over Venti, is that it's a lot more reliable when it comes to that part of actually using Xiao's elemental burst. As you can see, with all those enemies dying and the Anemo reactions, I have my ult up again. Basically almost off cooldown. So in that situation, in my opinion, Sucrose has that edge over Venti, where her elemental burst actually allows her to kind of synergize better with Xiao's ability to do plunging attacks. Now, obviously, Venti's elemental burst is a lot stronger when it comes to crowd control, as it keeps enemies in the air for the most part, and it can work well with other characters that can kind of capitalize on that. Characters that have AoE attacks, like Ganyu, for example, is really good. Now, obviously, if you do your elemental burst with Venti, you can technically jump in the air with Xiao and do your elemental skill twice. And that's going to deal a good amount of damage and generate a couple of particles for Xiao in case you don't already have your elemental burst up. But the name of the game with Xiao is that you kind of want to keep your elemental skill usages for after your burst to give you that quick bump of energy so that you can get your ultimate again. But of course, if you have an Anemo, enough energy recharge on Xiao, and you have, you know, Anemo support characters like Venti or Sucrose or Jean that can help you with that energy recharge, then that can also kind of alleviate the issue as well. Now, Jean is a bit different than Sucrose or Venti in the sense that her crowd control is definitely not as intense. She can do things like that where you bring enemies kind of clumped together in that way with her Gale Blade, but it's definitely, you know, not as effective as Sucrose or Venti and their abilities to crowd control enemies reliably without actually needing to be on the field. As you can see, this is going a lot slower, and chances are I'm actually going to die because of this. So I'm actually just going to use other characters. But as you can see, Jean fulfills kind of a different purpose than Sucrose or Venti when it comes to building a team around Xiao. She's definitely more of a traditional healer support that can offer a bit of energy battery, but she's definitely not going to be have the same kind of impact that Sucrose and Venti are going to have when it comes to crowd control. So I hope this video kind of gave you a bit of information on what to do with Xiao when it comes to pairing him with an Anemo support. In my opinion, Sucrose and Venti are definitely the better choices between Jean, the Anemo support, and those two. Obviously, Jean has her own utility with her healing, and Anemo support, or Anemo Traveler, in my opinion, is just not the best fit. My personal favorite is Sucrose. I just prefer her ability to kind of clump up enemies together and kind of make it a lot easier for Xiao to actually hit his plunging attacks. That's not to say that Venti is not good. I think Venti does well and better when you have other characters on your side of the field, or on your team, that can kind of benefit from his ultimate more. And again, you can do the thing where you ult and then you have Xiao kind of back and forth between the two enemies and deal a lot of damage that way. But I think that if you're going to go for the plunging attack method, where you just spam your plunging attacks during a crowd control elemental burst, then I think Sucrose is definitely going to be the best option. And, you know, especially if you have her C1, which is a lot easier to get than Venti's stuff, and you have something like Sacrificial Fragment like I do, then you can spam her E and get a ton of energy for Xiao and herself, so you can repeat the combo over and over and over again, and I think that's just a super powerful combo to have.